Thanks again to everyone for being here. You will find programs in the seats. And like Melissa said, after the music is over, we'll have a little talk back session. So please stick around for that. And without any further delay, I present Jackson Bosenbark.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Just want to start by saying thanks so much for coming out. It's really exciting and encouraging to see so many people in the audience tonight. I won't talk too much about this. I want to leave time for music, but I want to, before I talk about my music, I want to say thank you so much to Kinetic. These are wonderful musicians. Kinetic Ensemble is a lovely local chamber ensemble. They do great work, and having them collaborate with us so closely has been a really great privilege and honor. So on behalf of myself and my colleagues here tonight, I want to thank you guys. It's been an excellent. This first piece on the program is called From Gray. It's based on Atacama and Gray, which is the first thing we saw during the foyer. It depicts the Atacama Desert. It's in Chile. It's gray, obviously desaturated, a little gloomy, and I really wanted to lean into that. So this piece starts off in a sort of gloomy, dreary, subdued atmosphere, and you might notice the curious use of the preposition from in the title. That is intentional, not just because this music is responding to that piece and thus coming from it, but also the music itself progresses, emerges from that atmosphere, gradually, organically expands into denser textures, and then eventually returns back to the subdued texture at the beginning, though maybe slightly changed by the journey along the way. That's all I have to say about the music. Before we start, I just want to say a quick logistical note. This space, as you can see, is obviously it's very beautiful and very resonant, but it's also very sensitive to noise. As you sat down, you might have heard that these chairs produce a pretty audible squeak. So we are recording these performances tonight, so if you can just keep in mind and turn off your cell phone or silence them if you haven't done that already. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy.
This is Sam, Felix, and Chris, and we're so excited to be here presenting this music for you today. Just wanted to briefly say a little bit about Kinetic. We're actually a 16-person unconducted string ensemble, so more of a chamber orchestra size, but we also do plenty of stuff where we break out into smaller ensembles, smaller chamber music like this one, in this case, a string quartet. And it's so exciting to be able to do this collaboration because one of our favorite things is working directly with composers and kind of working with them to bring their pieces to life. In fact, on our next concert, if I can talk about that, at the end of March, we'll be playing again on March 28th, Saturday at Match. We'll be playing these by Stravinsky. We didn't work with him. But then a world premiere by Kareem Elson, who's also a composer here in Houston. And it's been such a pleasure to work with Jackson, Caleb, and Caden on these pieces, to workshop them, give our feedback, and try things out for them, really participate in the process of making them into what they are today. And that's what it's all about, I think. So without further ado, I'll hand it off to Caleb to talk about his piece.
Hello everyone, my name is Caleb Hernandez. I'm a grad student here at U of H. The next piece you're going to hear is entitled Camouflage Fields, and it is inspired by the piece that we saw out in this area called Camouflage. But more than that, it's also inspired just by the story of the Atacama desert, where, you know, we were told out there, you know, it's the driest non-polar desert in the world. You know, it's this big desert in Chile, and then we just dump a bunch of pollution and a bunch of fast fashion in there. So my piece explores the story where we hear this desert, we sense the vastness of it, we sense the dryness of it, and then all of a sudden we hear the pollution start coming in and start coming in more, and then by the end of the piece, the desert's completely transformed into this something new, where you can still find beauty in it, but it's not the same thing as it was before. I want to again thank Kinetic, and I want to thank you all for coming out, and I hope you all enjoy.
piece behind you, and if you turn around, there's kind of these 4 rows, and the piece is divided up into 4 sections that kind of mirror each of the rows. The first section kind of starts kind of slow and kind of atmospheric. The second section is kind of really contrapuntal and like really eerie, and then the last 2 sections are just a giant crescendo to the end, which is a giant noise. So I hope you enjoy. This is Desecration for Schindler.
again, everyone, and please a round of applause again for Caden Flores. Thank you, everyone. Thank you everyone for being here. And thank you, Jackson, Caleb, and Caden. Thank you, Kinetic Ensemble. I don't know if you guys have questions for our performers and composers tonight, but I'll just start us off with a few questions. I was wondering, for instance, why particularly choose pieces you chose, like what emotions made you think of that emotion?
So again, I chose Atacama and Gray, which is the one out in the foyer. There's a literal reason that my favorite color is gray, which is thrown in some weird looks in the past, but more specifically, I think deserts have always kind of represented like isolation and solitude to me. And I think that paired with gray and the subdued gloomy atmosphere that creates is what drew me to that piece specifically. And it's something I want to explore in music, so I thought it was fun to do that.
For my piece, and this piece of art, actually, both are very like distorted and dissonant, and it's an environment that I really can't create anywhere else but in music. And so I thought this is the perfect chance to bring something that's distorted and just kind of eerie, and that's why I chose. Also, it's grayscale, and I love anything grayscale.
I'm the one who chose a piece that had color in it, I guess. So again, like it wasn't just like the work itself is very interesting because it's like if you look closely, you see the particles of clothing in there. When you see it from afar, it does kind of just look like a landscape. And so that was something that I wanted to explore was like the camouflaging of the desert with clothing and how that kind of communicated.
Thank you. I'm curious, and I'm sure a lot of people are curious too. How do you make music out of visual art? How do you translate what you see into what you can hear or what you hear?
This is my first guess. Yeah, I wish I had a better answer. It's an elusive state to be able to write music. So having inspiration is in some ways helpful because it gives you something to write about, but in some ways it's kind of suffocating because everything you write you have to feel is representing this in some way. For me, I just sat at a piano for a while and kind of played around until I heard something that matched how I was feeling. Yeah, I can imagine it's a similar story. That's how.
I also sat at a piano for a long time and just kind of thought, well, how do I feel looking at this piece of music, and how do I feel about the oil spill? How do I feel about that? And just kind of playing, improvising on the piano, and just kind of, I feel like this is the feeling that I get that I can't really articulate in English very well.
To go off of that a little bit too is one thing to look at for me is colors, because some colors just have different like tonalities in my head. Like I was talking with Kate about this blue work on Monday night, and we were both agreeing that it's B flat major for some reason. And you can't quite put that into words why, but so I was like, okay, well, the work that I have is this more kind of like tan color, and to me that was a stepping bridge. Like, okay, I know kind of like what key I want to start in, so that's how I start. And then like the vastness of the desert is like, okay, well I gotta explore these interesting and possible like textures that just scream like, oh, we're looking at and feeling like just openness.
Yeah, thank you. I guess we should ask musicians. You sort of talked about it already. I'm wondering, what is the process? How did you have to approach working with instrument composers as opposed to working with composers in the past?
Well, I'll take it, I guess. Yeah. I don't think of student composers and non-student composers differently, but one nice thing about this project was that we built in the workshopping element to it explicitly. So back in November, it was right, early November, we held a workshop here at the school, where we read the pieces or drafts of the pieces, and then gave feedback, and then everyone had a chance to like give us feedback and tell us things that, oh, maybe could we try it this way? Could we try it this way? What happens if we did this? What happens if we did that? And then that meant that we got to say, oh, yeah, that's great, that works. Or that maybe we could find some other way to achieve the same effect. And that is really a great part of this type of collaboration, because we actually get that chance to work in an iterative way to help make the pieces what they are. I think that's like one of the special things about it for me.
If anyone has any question for any of our performers or composers.
How did you each come to composing? We'll start on this side.
Started in high school. I mean, well, before that, I would just be at a piano and be like this. Piano is my main instrument, so I'd be like, you know, practicing something, and then like, well, I don't want to practice a lot of stuff I have to practice anymore. So I'll just like fiddle around and like never like physically wrote anything down until about high school. But it's kind of just always been a thing that I like to do, like just come up with things.
I started arranging drumline things when I was in high school, and I downloaded a program called MuseScore, and I would just like, instead of having to explain parts to high schoolers, it's easier to just write it down and be like, play this. So that's how I started, and eventually I started doing that more and more, and being like, well, I kind of like writing other things than just beats, so I just kind of evolved, and now I'm here.
For me, I started playing piano as a kid. My mom, who's actually a music teacher, taught me piano. And I eventually realized that I hate practicing piano, but I love music. So I thought this was kind of the happy medium. I get to create music without having to put in all of the diligent practice hours. Not to say that composing isn't hard work, because it is. But this was my way of expressing that.
Please.
How does mentorship look like for composing, and how does it look like getting feedback from like the composer themselves? So two more questions. One of them is for you guys.
Well, I mean, it's honestly pretty vulnerable to like show, hey, this is a work of art that I created. What can I do to improve it to someone who has like a lot more experience? And so just it looks like, you know, hey, and then they can be like, this is all bad. You gotta restart this sometimes, and it's just you just gotta accept the fact that it's not personal, because it's not what you create isn't really who you are, even though sometimes it feels like it is.
I think it's super helpful to have live players telling you, hey, this works, this doesn't work, because a lot of the time it's really easy, at least for me, to get sucked into what the MIDI sounds like, just hitting play on my laptop. It's like, oh, that sounds cool, but then I hear it in person, that doesn't really sound how I like, and or it doesn't feel great to play, is not physically possible. So having a live feedback is like amazing for me, who doesn't play a string instrument or anything.
Yeah, these guys basically answered both parts of the question. But I will say I very much enjoy having a composition teacher. It helps me get out of my own head sometimes, which is helpful because I don't want to write the same music over and over again as I grow up. And to speak a little bit more about collaborating with Kinetic, I think I mentioned this earlier before my piece was played, but it's really a great opportunity to collaborate and have to get so much detailed personal feedback that is focused on helping us achieve something rather than critiquing us. I think that's a really valuable thing, and it's something that's hard to find as a student. So I'm very grateful for it. Okay.
And maybe from the performer's side, just speaking generally about working with a composer, it's pretty incredible to like, talk to somebody who wrote something on page that you're working on, you know. So often in our studies, like in conservatory or in school or wherever, we're playing like Beethoven or Brahms or Fauré or I don't know, name a dead composer. But you can't ask them in person what they meant by something. You have to go by the page and other evidence and your own reason. But when you're working with somebody wrote what's on the page, we can say, hey, what do you mean by this? Or maybe you can get more insight into the overall vision of the piece. And it's really illuminating in a different way, I feel, which is great. Anyone else wanted to jump in on that?
I mean, a very small thing, but I think, the three guys, like the feedback we gave in the workshops, I think were really small things. They already presented works that were, not too different from what you heard. So our ideas or advice would be minimal. It would be like whether like a balance thing between the 4 instruments, whether one instrument should be slightly louder in the texture. It would be articulation thing, whether you want more of like a sharp like attack on the note or more of a gentle kind of sweep. So like these kind of small things, but like I feel like it was kind of minimal in the sense, that they presented works that were already very, complete in a way. But it's kind of nice to be able to put on the sprinkles on the top in a way, and or see if they want the sprinkles. They may not want the sprinkles. They may decide their way was they love the way they had it the first way around, and that's also
only if they're gray sprinkles.
Yeah, gray sprinkles.
Thank you. Any questions?
I wanted to know which instruments the composers play and how they try to play each of these instruments' roles in their piece.
I guess I'll go first. I'm a percussionist. I play drums, I play marimba, I play a lot of like tambourine, triangle, and timpani, snare. I play a lot of things. So, for instance, like a woodwind instrument is very foreign to me, and a string instrument is even more foreign to me because the concept of like having just this thing of strings and then you're just supposed to put them down in natural pitch, that's foreign to me, and it doesn't. Writing for that is a lot harder than writing for something that I can play, that I can improvise right then and there. And how I use them in a texture, honestly, I kind of use them as if I would a marimba quartet. A lot of the writing that I did was very marimba quartet-y, in which you just have all these 16 notes and rhythms that go over each other and ridiculous time signatures, and it's just kind of what it is. But yeah, it's definitely weird writing for instruments that you don't play. For like piano, I mean, I can play piano. It's kind of easy to visualize yourself playing piano. I can't visualize playing any of this, like at all. Like, I can play bass guitar barely. I don't know how the heck.
Okay, so I already mentioned that I play piano. I used to play. I don't really play much anymore. And I neglected to mention something that's probably a lot more relevant in that I play viola, and I have for 12 years or so, and violin. Though I didn't play violin, but I'm pretty fluent and confident in viola. So I guess I had a completely different experience than Kaden here, because I more or less know how all those instruments work. I'm not a cellist, but most of the string instruments work more or less the same way. You put your finger down, you blow a string, and that's the instrument. And there are obviously intricacies and techniques that you use to do that, but for me it was a very accepting experience, I guess. Like, it just means that I am somewhat familiar with art.
So I already mentioned my primary interest in piano, but I also play clarinet, and I've also done saxophone, and I've also experienced percussion, and I've also learned the low brass instruments and the rest of the woodwinds. So I'm kind of done quite a bit of things, but I've never touched a string instrument, I think, ever in my life, to be honest. So writing for one was probably more along the lines of, okay,
So for me, I mentioned that I sat at piano and I kind of played around until I heard something that sounded like how I was feeling. But interestingly, a lot of it after that was fairly intuitive and not really explainable until after the fact. And I think that kind of speaks to abstraction. There's a certain emotional journey that any of these pieces will take you on. And I guess starting that journey and turning to music and then going on another musical journey was the approach that I took. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much, everyone. And please, a round of applause for